whoops, 170. Yes.
She's not on the record.
So we've, the site plan we have has proposed screening, additional screening in this area to help mitigate that.
Wait, stop this. Finish.
Mike, would you like to?
I'd like to actually, let the presentation be completed, then we can turn the lights on, because in order for people to make comments and ask questions, we need to get you on the record for it. And that means...
It's not on the record.
It's not, the problem is it's not on the record. We need to have everything on the record for this, and at the present time, we don't have the ability to do that. So if Jeff could just complete the presentation.
This is on the record?
No, you're on the record. You have the microphone and you're on the record. But the people asking questions and all are not.
I can't even hear them.
Maybe just pause for a second, let them go up and ask the questions. Because then they have to come up and identify themselves, and the lights aren't on. Why don't we pause and turn the lights on and let them ask them, clear it up, and move forward?
I'll do whatever the chairman would like me to do.
How much more, many more slides, how much more do you have to present?
We're well over half. There's only a total of 18, so we're well over halfway through.
Okay, why don't you, if you can finish up, that would be good. We'll turn the lights on, and then people can ask their questions.
So environmental design, we've proposed an agricultural fence with woven steel wire and wooden posts. We're willing to consider a more opaque fence if that will, if that's chosen by the visual impact consultant. We talked about before the cutouts to permit small animal access through the area. I've talked about the pollinators, and I've talked about the natural brush. This is something I referred to last time, but I wanted to show it. Solar Site Pollinator Habitat Planning and Assessment Form. This is from the state of Vermont. The same consultant that developed this is, I understand, working with the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority to implement the same thing. He's made a presentation to solar developers encouraging us to do this. So we've worked through this with the Cornell Cooperative Extension. Anything over a score of 85 is considered a pollinator-friendly score. We think the unique aspects of this site are going to allow us to get way beyond that. So saying it's going to have a pollinator field is not just a nice wishful thinking. There is actually science behind it and a technical analysis and assessment to get there and make sure you do it. This is a drawing that was submitted today in response to state parks and historic preservation, answering some of the questions that they had. They said they had no issue with the pressing of posts into the ground, which is probably about 98% of the project. They did have questions about trenching. We've answered that with the drawings here showing what the electrical trenches will look like. The trenches will basically extend from here up into the array, and then there's a line of trenches which will be in here. The trenches will be 8 inches wide, which is the important thing that they were concerned about. The other thing they had a question about was what kind of permanent facilities are going to be on the property. By that they mean structures, buildings, other than the solar panels and the fence. The answer is the only one is the transformer pad, which is right here, and the size of that is 6 feet by 6 feet. So we detailed that on a drawing for them. I sent it in to the planning board clerk today, along with an email. We sent it in, and I understand the next step is you forward that to State Parks?
Correct.
Thank you. Okay. So noise. I wanted to talk about this because there's obviously concern about it, and there should be concern about noise. The noise comes from two sources, the inverters and the transformers. Solar panels don't make noise, obviously. But the inverters are the electronics that convert the electrical energy coming from the solar panels to usable AC power and synchronizing it with the grid. And then the transformer is a typical pad mount green box transformer that Central Hudson deploys and every other utility deploy all over the place. As I said last time, we've selected what's more commonly residential technology for this system. The utilization of DC optimizers is very common in the residential space. It's very uncommon in the community solar arrays or the commercial space. We picked that because it is lower noise and it is safer technology, and I'll explain a little bit of that. The noise from the inverters comes only from really cooling fans. They have a very low buzz, but without the fans on. But the buzz noise is such that you can. We typically put the inverters in garages, in basements, outside kitchen windows, and rarely, if ever, have anybody notice or complain about the slight buzz. But the cooling fans will come on, and they can provide noise, and that's what the noise spec refers to in the data sheet. The cooling fans are muffin fans. They're similar to what you'd find on a desktop computer. In these inverters, they're designed to turn on at 131 degrees Fahrenheit to cool the inverters. And that's because these inverters are typically put inside buildings in rooms that don't have airflow. They can also be mounted directly into the sun, and they're designed for operations where they sit in the sun, maybe even in a desert. So they have these cooling fans that will come on. In our climate, and given that these inverters are located outside in free air and on the north side of the solar panels in the shade, we really suspect that the fans will rarely, if ever, come on. It's possible, maybe only on the hottest summer days, if it's not hazy, and if they ever do come on, it'll only be when the inverters are reaching or near full power, which would be between 11 a.m. and 4 p.m. Each inverter, when the fan is on, according to the manufacturer, has a noise specification of 55 dBA at a 1 meter distance. And I'll talk a little bit more about this, but to kind of put that in perspective, conversational speech is 60 dBA. There was a question raised last time about the transformer noise spec. It is 56 dBA at 100% full power, which so it's almost identical, for all intents and purposes, it's identical as to the inverters. It's a 500 kVA inverter, however, and the AC rated power of the system is 432 kilowatts, so it can never operate at full power. It's impossible for it to operate at full power, and we think that most of the time the solar system in the morning, afternoon is operating at about 50% full power, so it's the 56 dBA at full power will never be achieved either. But one thing engineers do is we do a worst case analysis, and that's what we've done here. So we assumed a worst case situation for noise with all of the inverter fans were on, which as I stated is highly unlikely. So we've assumed that all 13 inverter fans come on at the exact same time, that the transformer is operating at full power, which is technically impossible, but we assumed it anyway. We assumed also that all the equipment was co-located. I think Eric mentioned or asked last time about is the equipment co-located, and it's not. There's two inverter banks. They're 50 feet apart. Each inverter bank is also about 50 feet long. So the inverters are separated from each other, and it's important to remember the noise measurement of 55 dBA was measured 1 meter from in front of the inverter. We also assumed for noise attenuation purposes that there was absolutely no screening or vegetation or solid fence so that we only had free air, and when in fact there will be brush and trees that attenuate the sound. So when you combine that, if you combine 14 systems, and you assume, for sake of the argument, they're all located in the exact same spot, you would have a combined noise generated of 67.5 dBA at a distance of 1 meter away from it. And sound attenuates or goes down at 6 dB rather, for every doubling of the distance. So we've done an analysis here to show what the noise would be like at various locations outside the property. So in that worst case analysis, everything turns on at the same time, everything's co-located, all the inverters are, pushed together and they're all operating at full power. You have 67.5 dBA, which is somewhere in between conversational speech and being outside of a shower that's running. And assuming you're 1 meter away from it. So at the closest property, which is 170 feet away, property line, the neighbor to the north, the attenuation is now down to 34 dBA, which is the level of a whisper. And down at Wurtemberg Road, or at the south property line, we're now down into 23 dBA, which is basically at the level of rustling leaves. So even in that worst case situation, everything turns on, everything's co-located, there's no screening. You've got rustling leaves on Wurtemberg Road and a whisper at the property line to the north. So we really obviously don't think there's going to be a noise issue here. In fact, when you're standing on the property, the thing that you do notice is you notice Route 9G, which is, by the time you're on Wurtemberg Road, Route 9G is only a couple hundred feet away. And that sound is obviously 24/7, potentially. Safety, I'll just skip through this quickly. It's built to codes. These systems are designed to be safe. Again, we've used residential level technology. The DC optimizers provide a thing called rapid shutdown. If there's a system failure, they deactivate at the module level. So each individual module gets switched off at its source in the event of a failure. And then also, we have been doing this for 15 years, and we have over 1,600 systems in the area, so we know how to build it and construct these things. Construction process was important to some of the neighbors. We estimate 8 weeks to build it. It depends on weather. Weeks 1 and 2 would be brush hogging, the berm construction, and the pushing of the posts. That's when most of the noise would occur. And I do want to mention that on Wednesday, since I know some of the neighbors are here, on Wednesday we will be, the manufacturer will be up there doing some geotechnical testing. They'll be pushing some posts in the ground, and then they wiggle them and take stress and strain measurements. They'll be pushing about 5 or 6 posts in the ground and then pulling them away and taking them away with them. So if you hear noise, don't panic. We haven't started construction. It's just the testing. And then weeks 3 to 8 are basically electrical and mechanical assemblies. This is people driving up in vans and then doing electrical work, which does not really make that much noise. And that's about it. The only excavation, as I've said, is for the electrical trenches and for the buried conduit and a 6x6 foot transformer pad. The electrical conduit trenching basically gets done in 1 day. You trench, lay conduit in behind it, and then backfill as we go. Maintenance and upkeep. Because of the module level power electronics, the residential level technology will have internet monitoring on all modules, all solar modules, all 1,560 of them. We'll have security cameras on the array. The pollinator field, one of the benefits of the pollinator field, the consultant is recommending that once they catch hold in about 2 years, it reduces the mowings to only twice per year. You do it once at the beginning of the spring, and then one more time after August 15th. The pollinators, the plants grow about 2 feet high, which is the bottom edge of the solar module, so it's not a problem. Snow removal or plowing is generally not necessary. And then occasional part repair or replacement. Our experience is a system this size, maybe once or twice a year, we might have an optimizer fail or an inverter that kicks offline and we have to go restart it or reboot it or upgrade the software or something. So we think that once the thing's there, it's pretty quiet and it's a pretty benign thing. So, and that's it. So. Do you want me to leave this on in case anyone wants to refer to anything, Mike, or, yeah, okay.
Anything else you'd like to say at the moment, Jeff? Okay. Questions from the public? Or comments, questions? You all just come up, identify yourself, and please feel free to speak. Yes.
Hi, I'm Jacqueline Murray. I'm an adjacent landowner at 361 Wurtemberg Road. I have a question for Jeff about the map. If he could pull like the site map, the aerial from the drone, it would help if I could point it out on there. And I also have a question because we're talking about the solar plant now, but it's possible that in addition to the solar plant, something else could be put on that parcel. Am I correct in saying that? Like you could build a house in addition to the...
It could happen. It depends on the lease arrangement, how much of the land is necessary for leasing. It's
Okay,
not just where the plant sits, but it's also to make sure the screening is preserved, that someone else can't come in and
Yeah, because I
invade
did
the
ask a
screening.
question. I believe the answer, Jeff told me that yes, a house could be built. So I'm trying to figure out where that house could go without disrupting the screening. Because right now, all of that screening, that natural screening, lies outside of that 2-acre fenced-in parcel. So who's going to be maintaining it? And if it's not being leased to you, and somebody wants to go build a house on that property, for me, my property, it's all natural screening behind it. So, and my guess would be that if somebody's going to build a house, it's probably going to be right behind mine where that barn is. And I wanted to point out that that barn, I wanted to see where it was on the map, because I can clearly see that barn from my property. So that's a really, really big concern for me, and I'm just wondering how that's going to be addressed. So then in the solar law, it states that the special use permit will be renewed. It's under review initially after 3 years and then after 5 years. So let's say 2 years after, or 3.5 years after the solar plant is built, somebody wants to build a house, they take a bunch of trees down, now everybody, or my parcel or an adjoining, any adjacent parcel could see the plant now. So would that mean that we would have to wait 5 years to bring this up, when that would be reviewed again in 5 years?
No, it's our intent that whatever lease arrangement is made, it will ensure that no one can take down the screening that's necessary to ensure that the visibility of this plant is not exposed.
Okay, so...
At this point, I don't know if there's an agreement yet between Jeff and Barry detailing exactly what's going to be involved in the lease, but certainly that lease has to be developed in such a way that what you're describing cannot happen.
Okay, because that was something that...
Is there a deed restriction placed on the property?
I don't know of any.
No, I'm saying...
Could there be?
There was a couple of things, supplemental screening on the outskirts where potentially neighbors could see the solar field. If it does go into place, do we have assurance that they're not going to be cut down? Do we place a deed restriction? Do we replace?
I think we have to look at the lease that they develop between them, because the planning board has to approve that. It's part of the approval process, and the lease has to be such that no one can take down the screening. Even if-
Okay.
let's assume for a minute if it had to have the whole property. leased for this project to maintain the screening. If that's what had to happen to maintain the screening, then that's what would have to happen to get approval from this board.
Okay. So I have a couple other things, but I'll let somebody else talk, and I'm going to look these over.
I assume that the issue that's being raised now is going to be the principal issue that will be discussed on October 2nd as the board goes into environmental review. Is how is the existing screening going to be protected?
Oh, if you could use your microphone, okay.
What I said is that as the board gets into environmental review at its work session on October 2nd, I would assume that the principal issue, or certainly one of the major issues that is going to be discussed, is how the screening will stay in place, guaranteed to stay in place for the life of the solar plant, be that 5 years, 30 years, or whatever. And that will require that there be certainly agreements between Hudson Solar and the property owner, or in fact, Hudson Solar might be in a position of needing to lease or otherwise encumber the entire site.
Amanda Miller, 329 Wurtemberg Road. So just quickly and briefly about what Jeff just said. Well, one, is the workshop open to the public that you're talking about?
Yes, it's not a public comment period, but you can come and listen to all the things we're saying, so you'll be fully aware of where we're going and what we're hoping to do.
Right, I can like sit here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Can we, the neighbors, provide names for consultants for you all to consider? I heard Jeff mention something about it.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
About the noise, I feel like last time, first of all, I don't think I really heard anything new here today. Seems like a redo of last time because the technology didn't work, his projector didn't work. Last time we were talking about noise, I felt that some of the board members felt that an actual demonstration of some sort should be done, and it seems like what's occurring today is an end run around that. And I would just ask that we still go through with the noise study. I would again point you to that article from Edgartown in Massachusetts where they were told it was going to be quiet. And I understand what Jeff's saying, but as it stands now, all of the inverters, the transformer are all concentrated on the Karate property line. And if he installs this and there is noise and it's not a whisper, it's not a rustling of leaves, then what? And I don't think this can be answered right now, but you know, there's no, hopefully technology gets better, but there's no saying that these inverters will be they won't be discontinued in the future. And what if he can't get something that's maybe compatible with whatever system he is in there? What if in the future you can't have one of these, you know, maybe quieter inverters, if that is really what they are? So that's just a thought about the future with the noise. And again, you know, there's 13 of them and a transformer. And the town noise ordinance is what it is. And I believe, I can't remember off the top of my head, it was either 50 dBAs or 60 dBAs. And, you know, maybe that's the sound of a conversation, but that's what our town noise ordinance says. And I guess I just had one other comment about, you know, Jeff mentioned that people who rent or live in condos could benefit from this. I don't know really if the shares really are $60,000. I don't know that if you're renting an apartment or living in a condo in Rhinebeck, you can afford this. I don't mean to say that inappropriately, but it just sounds, I didn't think that that's made much sense. Oh, Jeff pointed out the wetlands and how no one can build on the wetlands on the property to the east, and no one can build on the wetlands to the property to the north. But I think we're entitled to enjoy our entire property, and just because we can't build a house on those wetlands doesn't mean that we don't enjoy them. I have 24 acres, we have a vernal pond, we walk down to it, we like looking at it, we like enjoying it. Since I've gotten to know Phil through this process, he's allowed me to use his wetlands and, you know, fish. He has a stock pond and I throw it back. So I think that just because you can't build a house on those wetlands doesn't mean that we can't sit and enjoy them and enjoy our entire property. So I also had written comments that I'd like to read, but I don't know if anyone else wants to say something. Anyone? So first I have comments and I have additional questions, and I'm going to go through my comments first and then pose the questions to you all that I don't think will be able to be answered this evening. First, in regards to Sharon Schrod's recusal, Sharon Schrod has recused herself, and as a result, I'd like to read you all something. Quote, "You have also asked our opinion regarding the scope of the trustees' recusal. We have found that members of local legislative bodies with conflicts of interest in a particular matter before the body should recuse themselves from taking any actions with respect to that matter. In our opinion, the trustees' participation in deliberations has the potential to influence other trustees who will exercise a vote with respect to the matter in question. Further, the mere presence of the trustee at such deliberations holds the potential of influencing other trustees. Thus, it is our belief that the trustee should not participate in or be present at the hearing or any deliberations, including deliberations conducted during an executive session of the Board of Trustees." Those are the words of the Office of the Attorney General of the State of New York, specifically their informal opinion 99-21. This is but one opinion like this. There are many others, but I thought reading just one should make the point. It should also be noted that the Office of the New York State Comptroller states that, quote, "Participating in a discussion or official action includes, but is not limited to, any form of pre-decisional communications, including emails, informal or formal discussions, and voting on the matter." I believe it was improper for Sharon Schrod to sit through the last public hearing, and I similarly believe it's improper for her to continue to do so. Moreover, I ask all of you members of the Planning Board to hold Sharon Schrod to her recusal. I would also like to explicitly ask you, Chairman Trimble, to give us all your assurances that Sharon Schrod has not, since her recusal, participated in any way in the Planning Board's consideration of this application.
I can guarantee she has not.
Thank you. And I would also like your assurances that as long as you're present, Sharon Schrod will not participate in any way in the Planning Board's consideration of this application.
I can guarantee that as well.
Thank you. I wanted to update everyone on our petition. As of today, 101 people total have signed our petition in opposition to the solar power plant, including 29 Wurtemberg Road resident landowners. Notably, Gloria and David Almeida, who are the property owners of 356 Wurtemberg Road, have now signed the petition. Mayla Stevens, whose letter Mike Trimble read aloud at the last meeting, is not the owner of 356 Wurtemberg Road. She is a tenant. Also, no one has contacted me to remove them from the petition. Nancy Kelly, I wanted to talk about her letter. Nancy Kelly, the town historian, wrote to the planning board dated August 15th, 2015. I think she meant 2017. The planning board must disregard her entire letter, even the parts containing her historical opinions. With all due respect to Nancy Kelly, and I truly mean that, she gave perfunctory consideration to the historical significance of the Wurtemberg neighborhood. 6 sentences, to be exact. In my opinion, in our letter to you all dated August 21st, we provided a much more in-depth, detailed, and thoughtful recitation of the Wurtemberg neighborhood's historical significance. One important fact missing from Nancy Kelly's letter is that the Barry Sherrod property, along with the Phil Karate property, appears to have been part of the Pultz farm, according to a book published by Kinship, which I believe is Nancy Kelly's company, called Early Settlements of Dutchess County by Margaret Herrick. If a solar power plant is built on the Sherrod property, it can never be reacquired by the Pultz farmhouse. More shocking than the superficial historical opinion provided by Nancy Kelly is her obvious and actual bias. Specifically, Nancy Kelly writes, quote, "Unlike housing, solar panels are reversible and do not generate the traffic and increased demand for services that accompany increase in population. Rhinebeck has recognized the importance of green energy, but this effort will only be successful if we do not take the not in my backyard attitude. We can have clean energy and preserve our heritage at the same time. Proper screening for projects and judicious selection of sites is part of the necessary procedure." Ms. Kelly goes on to state, the quote, "I am presenting this report as town historian, but should also disclose that land we own has been suggested for a solar installation. As with this project, we will give it thoughtful consideration." These conclusory, unsupported, and gratuitous opinions are entirely outside the expertise of a town historian and what I believe the scope of her opinion in this matter should have been. More importantly, several of her opinions are either inapplicable to the current application or patently untrue. For example, at the last public hearing, Jeff Irish made clear that this was going to be a permanent power plant. To that end, what does it matter if solar power plants are or are not reversible land uses? This power plant will be at 355 Wartenberg Road forever. For another example, Ms. Kelly states that there must be judicious selection of sites without stating whether or why 355 Wartenberg Road is such a site. Judicious means having, showing, or done with good judgment or sense. Placing a solar power plant in the middle of a residential, rural, historic neighborhood contiguous to 2 National Register sites with all 6 adjacent landowners in opposition and in close proximity to environmentally sensitive resources does not demonstrate any good sense or judgment. This is also not NIMBY, as I stated the last time. It's unfortunate that without apparently speaking to any of our neighbors, with the exception of myself, that is how she chose to categorize our actions of protecting our property values and the historical integrity of our neighborhood, something that I believe is her job. As I said before, there are many streets in the town of Rhinebeck that have 0 National Register sites, 0 historical buildings, and are already open to commercial or industrial development. This is NIMBY for Barry Sherrod. He does not live on this parcel, and it's my understanding he has no plans to live on it. It's also not on Jeff Irish's more than 30 acres on Bolenbecker Road. With respect to the visual impact, again, Ms. Kelly is a town historian, not a visual impact expert, and is therefore not qualified to offer this opinion. Nevertheless, I do not see anywhere in this letter that Ms. Kelly asked to walk on adjacent properties to see if there was any visual impact. Her visual impact opinion also fails to state whether she even visited the site, and if she did visit, it fails to account for the fact that it was August when there's full foliage. Finally, Ms. Kelly disclosed that land she owns has been suggested for a solar installation. I spoke to Nancy Kelly about this application back in July on the telephone. She was as lovely as all the stories I've heard about her. But during that phone call, she told me that she was, quote, pro-solar, and that she wanted to put a community solar array on her property. Her letter noticeably fails to mention, though, who has suggested her property for a solar installation. Regardless of whether Hudson Solar is the company seeking to put a power plant on her property, I would argue that Ms. Kelly has a financial interest in the outcome of this application. And regardless of whether it is Hudson Solar or another company, her entire letter must be disregarded by the planning board. In matter of Schweiler versus Village of Caledonia, the appellate division annulled a determination approving a site plan where the planning board's chairperson manifested actual bias when she wrote a letter to the mayor supporting both the rezoning and the project. The court concluded that, quote, the appearance of bias and actual bias in this case require annulment of the planning board's site plan approval, close quote. Although Ms. Kelly is on the planning board, the concept is applicable here, where she, a town official, is manifesting actual bias by writing and submitting this letter containing her personal and gratuitous opinions about solar power plants, which have clearly infected and informed the mere 6 sentences containing her historical opinions. In addition, if the planning board takes any of Ms. Kelly's opinions into consideration, I would argue that it would taint the planning board's vote with respect to this application. My next point, and I promise I'm almost done. Early in the new year, when it was still cold outside, myself and my husband were driving north on Wartenberg Road to our home when my husband suddenly stopped the car because the gate to Barry Sherrod's property had swung open and was blocking almost 3/4 of Wartenberg Road. At that point in time, the gate to the property was right where the property line met the edge of Wartenberg Road. It's since been moved. I climbed out of the car, tried to secure the gate, but couldn't. When I got home, I looked up the property owner, found Barry's number, and called him and told him about the safety hazard his gate was causing. He thanked me, said he would take care of it, and he said that we're going to start work there this summer. Little did I know what that meant. Just last meeting, Jeff had to stop and correct himself mid-sentence from speaking about the power plant as if it was going to be approved. About a week or two after the last public hearing, a petition signatory stopped me in town and said, Amanda, I thought the power plant application wasn't approved yet. I said, as far as I know, it hadn't been. He then proceeded to tell me how he ran into a Hudson Solar employee that he knows, and the employee told him that this power plant is a done deal and it's happening. There's another member of our group who's had a similar experience. All of these stories and experiences are entirely consistent with what I believe to be the pro forma application submitted by Hudson Solar, which was accompanied by a 24-sentence, Section 125-67 General Standards narrative that barely paid lip service to the special use law's requirements. These 24 sentences have little or no support and include statements that were eventually disproven. For example, at the time this narrative was submitted, adjacent landowners were able to see Hudson Solar's mock-ups from their property. These stories and experiences are entirely consistent with the applicant's EAF statement, which failed to mention the Pultz farmhouse, which is substantially contiguous and, according to an email exchange I had with Chairman Trimble, potentially contiguous to 355 Wurtemberg Road, and claims that only deer are the predominant wildlife species that occupies or uses the project site. Finally, these stories and experiences are entirely consistent with the town historian's August 15th letter, which consists of 16 sentences, only 6 of which arguably relate to a historical opinion. So I ask, what don't we all know, and are we all just wasting our time? Then next, the comprehensive plan. As we stated in our letter to you, August 21st, 2017, the proposed solar power plant is not in harmony with the comprehensive plan. Section 125-65A of the special use permit law requires that the proposed use be in harmony with the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan lists 11 Wurtemberg Road properties and 1 Frost Road property and states that these 12 properties, quote, should be protected and new development near such sites should be consistent with the existing setting of the site, taking into account the history, existing architecture, and character of the surrounding area, close quote. The proposed power plant is new commercial and industrial development that fails this test for all the reasons I'm stating here today and that we have set forth in our letter dated August 21st. I would also like to note that Ms. Kelly's letter makes no mention of the comprehensive plan, let alone this aspect of it. We talked a lot last time about property values. I wanted to provide you all, the planning board, with further evidence that this solar power plant will impair the value of adjacent properties. When I first heard about the plan, I contacted various neighbors. Instead of contacting my neighbors at 361 Wurtemberg Road, Jacqueline did not own the home yet, I initially contacted the broker who was selling the home. I told her what was going on with the power plant and asked that she tell the property owner. When time went by and I hadn't heard anything, I contacted Mr. Lanier, the then homeowner of the 361 Wurtemberg Road. I called him on the phone, I told him what was going on and asked if he would come to the public hearing on August 21st. He said the house had actually sold a few months back and was about to close. I asked him if he considered telling the soon-to-be new homeowner. Again, time went by and I heard nothing. I contacted the broker again to see if the house had closed and asked her if she'd please let me know as soon as it closed so I could try and contact the soon-to-be homeowner. She said she would. I never heard anything. I later found out that the broker not only represented the seller, but also represented the buyer, Jacqueline Murray, in the transaction. Neither the former homeowner nor Jacqueline's own broker would tell her about the solar power plant. This solar power plant makes the Wurtemberg neighborhood less desirable to live in, and this story is further evidence that would impair the value of surrounding properties and, once known to a prospective buyer through, for example, Google Earth, even cause home sales to fall through. We talked last time a lot, and even today, about telephone poles. At the last public hearing, Jeff discussed how Wurtemberg Road is a 3-phase telephone pole or feeder, which is necessary to connect to the grid. According to Central Hudson's DER System Indicator app, there appears to be 3-phase lines on Route 9, Mill Road, Rhinecliff Road, Salisbury Turnpike, Violet Hill Road, and River Road, just to name a few. There appear to be 5 projects over 50 kilowatts in Central Hudson's queue for Rhinebeck. All 5 projects are Hudson Solar projects, and 4 of them are located on other non-Wurtemberg 3-phase lines. Regardless, I spoke to Central Hudson's interconnection office, and I was told that you can convert any telephone pole to 3-phase. On January 9th, 2017, Town Supervisor Elizabeth Spinzia acknowledged as much during a town board meeting. If Hudson Solar or any other company limits themselves to pre-existing 3-phase telephone lines, they're putting an unfair burden on those roads and communities and effectively guaranteeing that this type of industrial and commercial development will be concentrated in certain areas instead of spread throughout the town. The fact that Wurtemberg Road has a 3-phase telephone pole cannot be used to justify granting this application when Hudson Solar or any other company, or person for that matter, can convert any telephone pole in town to 3-phase. So noise, when I first spoke to Jeff in July, I brought up the noise issue. He told me the plant would not make any noise. I asked him if I can go look at a power plant he's installed and hear for myself. He told me no, I cannot because they're all on private property. Now Jeff seems to admit that the power plant will make noise. He calls it a muffin fan, another supporter called it a dishwasher. And again, you know, I would reiterate, it's 13 dishwashers or refrigerators concentrated on Phil Karate's property line that may exceed the town's own noise ordinance. And he's provided us today with the transformer noise level that will also make noise. I've done additional research into the extent this plant, which I don't know if it does, has a device that tilts the panels, that can also make noise. And I would just reiterate, I think whatever demonstration can be done to show that, let's say 170 feet away or wherever these property lines are, you can't hear this thing, I think needs to be done, and a slide is not sufficient. I have 3 more points. In RC5, a wholesale business is a prohibited use. By definition, the solar power plant is a wholesale business. The new solar law states that a solar power plant's, quote, primary purpose, close quote, is, quote, wholesale or retail sales of electricity, close quote. The solar power plant is also akin to a storage facility. These panels are being stored on this property, yet they effectively belong to other people. In RC5, warehouses, including self-storage, are also prohibited uses. The Wurtemberg community has always sought to preserve the rural and historic character of our neighborhood. Last time I told you about Edith Thomas and how she refused to lease her land to Hudson Solar. There are other neighbors who also receive literature in the mail asking them about hosting community solar in their properties who told me they threw such proposals in the trash. The pastor told me that Matt Nemetz, who owns the Traver farmhouse on the corner of Lye and Wurtemberg Road, one of our National Register properties, purchased all the property adjacent to his home that is across the street from the church to prevent development and to protect the church. 20 years ago in my home, the community rallied together to prevent someone from building a dog kennel, which in RC5 is a permissible use with a special use permit and site plan. The town denied that application, as it must similarly deny the present one. Finally, at the last public hearing, Cindy at the end raised concerns about the impact the solar power plant would have on their business. The preservation of historic resources is dependent upon people being able to renovate and maintain historic buildings and use them in alternative ways, such as bed and breakfasts. If the old Rhinebeck Inn is no longer profitable, it puts the oldest extant structure in the Wurtemberg neighborhood, and that's according to the New York State Historic Preservation Office, in jeopardy. And very, very briefly, just some other points. I didn't see in the application materials where it spoke about glare. Hudson Solar's website shows various homes with panels on them that appear to have glare at certain angles. I know the new law speaks about glare, but I think it would be appropriate for someone to do an aeronautical study to determine whether 2 acres of panels would impair the flight paths of either the Rhinebeck Aerodrome or the Kingston-Ulster Airport. In 2005, the town board decided against siting a cell tower on a property near the former landfill because it was in the Rhinebeck Aerodrome's runway flight path. And the airplanes that either take off or are headed back to the Kingston-Ulster Airport do fly overhead over there. Last public hearing, Jeff wanted to make a presentation, but couldn't because technology failed him. That's what technology tends to do. My question is, how would this plant be monitored if the internet goes down? The application states that the plant will only require 2 visits per year for mowing and maintenance. Even if that is true, which again I doubt, what about cleaning the panels? Jeff said that snow removal is not necessary, but just last year, I mean, I guess it was this year, we had how much snow? I took a picture outside my house, the snow drifts were up to my head. I don't know that you could, if you wanted to, if you could get to the panels, if you had to fix them in that kind of weather. And just now, he admitted that the 2 mows per year are going to kick in 2 years from now. So what about the first 2 years? It just seems like a ridiculously low number of visits per year for this. If the special use permit is granted, what happens if Jeff sells Hudson Solar? I don't know if you know that right now, but no, you don't, okay. What has been done to see that this project site gets enough sun, and during what time of the year was it done? I went on Google Project Sunroof at the suggestion of one of the plant's supporters, and the only area of Rhinebeck that Google shows is Rhinecliff. None of Wurtemberg Road, let alone the rest of Rhinebeck, is on there. Finally, at the last public hearing, is mentioned that Hudson Solar would maintain portions of the property that were outside the leased parcel. My question is whether Hudson Solar's maintenance of other non-leased areas of the property violates the spirit of the solar law, which appears to constrain the leased portion of the site to 2.5 acres. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, Dave Clipon, and my wife, John, and I own the Pulse Farmhouse, which is the at 340 Wurtemberg Road, the bed and breakfast they were talking about. We've already submitted our opinion to the board, so that's done. But I do have a question for Jeff. I was hoping that you could go back to the slide that showed the Delaware County solar array. Is that possible? And this is only for reference. I was just wondering what the count of an array like that was. So how many panels is that? Is that 2
Yeah.
panels per
If you don't mind, Richard.
post, or how many? What would be the count there? I suppose that's what I was wondering about.
Count of what?
The number of solar panels. That's what I'm not sure about.
In this array?
Correct.
This is a 200 kilowatt array, so it's about 40% the size of what we're proposing.
So that's so is it 2 panels per post, or is that 1 panel per post?
How many panels are in that picture?
Well, there's rows behind it. It's just 24 panels per section.
So it is 2 panels per post.
One here, 2 there, so there's 1,
12.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. This is 26.
26, okay. All right, and just highlighting it as a reference, so 1560 would be, or 1540 would be the number of panels on the site, and that gets a reference. So I'm not sure the multiplication, but that's 1 row, or I suppose, if the rest are going in.
This is part of a 200 kilowatt DC.
So we want to know how many panels in that picture.
26 here, and there's another 26 there.
We're talking 1,560, there's 50 there.
In this, well, this entire system,
It's 50 panels.
entire system
We want to go by the picture.
27 times what you see in the picture.
27, okay. That's good.
27 times what you see in the picture.
Okay, appreciate it, thank you. That's actually just what I need to know.
Thank you, Richard. Other questions or comments?
I have some questions for Jeff. if there's no-
I'm sorry?
I have some questions for Jeff, if there's no more from the public.
Well, apparently you're on, Eric.
Well, a couple of terms you use that I find a little not as descriptive as they might be. When you talk about pushing posts, you're pushing posts in the ground much the way you push a nail into a board with a hammer, right? I mean, it's going to be a pounding operation, correct?
Yeah, it's a pounding
All right,
operation.
so you say, well, we're pushing posts.
It's like a fence post, wooden fence post, you know, when
Well,
they...
I understand, but it's not being pushed in the ground, it's being wanged into the ground with a big old
Yeah,
slamming hammer.
yeah.
Okay. And then, you know, you use the reference to sound levels like a whisper or rustling. Those are pleasant enough sounds. I don't like whispers myself, but I mean, is it more like a mosquito or, you know, you're in the middle of it? So, you know, so the actual tone of the sound is very important, I think, in terms of whether or not that's going to be an annoying sound to the neighbors. Forget about the sound level. So I think a sound demonstration...
It's a muffin fan. So it's like a fan on a computer, it's like the fan on my projector there. And the fan I can hear on, I think, this laptop or something.
Same sound from the transformer?
That's probably more like a hum.
Okay, and what is the frequency of the hum?
The frequencies, I don't know, I'd have to,
All right, well, that's what I
Research
said.
that. It's probably-
Demonstration of these sounds would be
it would-
better than descriptive
my guess it would
words,
be,
which aren't very
it'd be
descriptive.
60 hertz and 60 hertz odd harmonics.
There must
All right.
be a solar power plant of a close size that we can go visit within 50
Not,
miles.
not that uses this technology. The one that Amanda referred to, Edgertown or Eggertown or something, that's the commercial and industrial technology. I'm aware of the inverters that are used in that system. That is what we didn't want to use here. They use, they transmit high voltage DC from the array, and they do all of the switching and all of the electronic processing of the power is done at that inverter. And that's a single, it's a central inverter system, so it's a large piece of equipment, and yeah, they do make more noise. But that system also, I've seen pictures of it, and the inverter it looks like it's about as far as I am from you to the neighbor's driveway. There's like a chain link fence and the inverter's sitting there. It's this big, huge cabinet. And I'm not surprised they can hear it. That's, I think that's poor design, and that's what we've tried to not do here.
Okay. Also, you said you're not going to do any snow removal, but at 23 degrees after a snowstorm, you're going to go several days without any collection from those panels.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah, we've been doing this for 15 years. We can calculate the energy to come from a solar system annually within any 12-month period, plus or minus 5%. And we always recommend that people do not clear the snow off the panels. The solar resource in December, January, February is so low, the maximum sun angle on December 21st is only 21 degrees, 22 degrees above the horizon. The days are short. The panels are at a 25-degree angle, so the angle of incidence is so low that there just isn't much energy that's being produced. So you're better off just to leave the solar panels, let the snow come off, and not try to scrape them off. If you do try to scrape the snow off, you're more likely to scrape the glass and do damage to the panels. So we would just leave, if we got a snow, they're designed to take the 3 feet of snow that Amanda referred to. The structure's designed for that. Just let it sit there. It'll come off. When it comes off, in the spring, summer, fall, that's when you get most of the energy.
Okay.
And cleaning, I think she mentioned cleaning as well. There's, cleaning is required and recommended in places like the southwestern United States. It's not recommended in the northeastern United States because we get an average of 3 inches of precipitation per month year-round, and they self-clean.
Now, in terms of relying on these little cedar trees to be a good part of the screening for this, but cedar trees are a transitional species at best. So, I'm sure this whole thing was a field less than 20 years ago, and in 20 years' time, it will be a forest. Those cedars won't be the same evergreens if the trees around them aren't removed. Is that part of what's going to go on, is to remove the oaks and other taller species that will eventually crowd out the cedars?
We've proposed a screening plan, but I understand the town is considering hiring an independent consultant, and I'd like to see what he or she proposes, and we're willing to adapt our screening plan. We can do a berm, we can do a solid fence. Solid fence is probably less expensive than a berm. The screening, additional screening that we have proposed has been recommended independently by 2 separate people, a landscaper who's knowledgeable in screening and a landscape architect. And they recommended forsythia bushes and silky dogwood, I think they're called, densely packed. When they, and that's what we've proposed along the fence, when they fill in, if you start them at 6 feet high, which is a good size, which is what we're doing at another site, they fill in, they provide adequate year-round screening because they're just a tangle of stuff. And then the evergreens we proposed were giant green arborvitae, which again were recommended by a different a landscape architect and a different landscaper.
And the last question, now, say 10 years down the road, you find out that 50% of your panels are failing, you would want to replace them at that time. If at that time the efficiency of the panels has grown so much that you'll get, this isn't limited by the kilowatt output of the thing, it's limited by the panel size, is that correct? In other words, your application is saying you're going to have this many acres of panel coverage. So it could be that you could put out twice as much.
Our experience is in the, I think it's like maybe 40,000 solar panels we've installed. We've had maybe 5 that failed on their own. And the solar panels themselves have a 25-year warranty. All of our community solar projects, we purchase and stock replacement spare solar panels so that we can...
So you would replace them in kind?
Correct. And there was talk, I think Amanda mentioned, about the inverters, the technology becoming obsolete. They also have a 25-year warranty from the manufacturer, so we don't think that will be an issue either. And it's not a permanent, although I skipped over decommissioning because I think that's something we got to get to later. New York State's policy and Town of Rhinebeck's zoning law requires that the system be decommissioned and removed at the end of 25 years.
Whether or not it's still viable in any regard?
Correct.
It's a requirement?
Yeah.
Is that a requirement of this proposal then?
Yes.
Okay.
That,
Yes.
after 25 years, the entire system is decommissioned?
That was New York State's recommendation in their model zoning law, solar zoning law, and that was adopted by the Town of Rhinebeck.
If everything gets pulled out of there, and if you
Everything
want to do
gets-
it again, you have to reapply and put a new one.
Even the posts in the ground have to be pulled out?
Yeah.
Question?
Yes.
It has not yet been a clear answer on the feasibility of some sort of sound demonstration. Where are we going to go on that?
Well, when I was on the Zoning Board of Appeals, I had the lead for the sound study that was done for the gun club. That's a sound that's easy to simulate, because you just tell someone fire a gun, and then it happens. It's impossible.
To demonstrate it?
No, because to put one of those inverters in that location, we'd have to have 50 solar panels powering it. We'd have to have the inverter hit 131 degrees Fahrenheit to make the fan come on.
Where in the country is this company sold and installed this equipment that you're proposing?
That I don't know.
Is there any way for us to find that out easily?
I can look, but again, you're not going to get, it's hard to get the fans to come on.
Come on, you can cross wire them and get them to turn the fan on.
Well, I wouldn't, we're not authorized to open up the equipment and modify it like
Will
that.
the company demonstrate the sound?
I don't know. But it's a fan. It's a cooling fan.
Questions
Yeah.
about the whole concept.
Yep.
Originally, I guess it was 80, projected 80 homes. Now you're saying maybe 120, okay. How are the shares sold? Are they sold per potential usage of a house? A small house buys X number of shares because, well, 80 houses, how much is a share? Everybody keeps saying 60,000. Is that a reasonable number on the 80 share?
How much did they say? Sorry?
$60,000?
60,000.
No, that's ridiculous.
How much?
I wish, but
So a
unfortunately,
homeowner,
no.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but any of the homeowners that want to purchase a share must live in the town of Rhinebeck?
No.
So why is it called a community solar? Why is it after, say, power plant?
We're marketing it, we're focusing our marketing efforts in Rhinebeck.
So New York State whole term community solar, it just gives you a big ugly feeling as a community solar plant? It's not restricted
you're-
to people who live in a certain area, pulling off the grid in that area?
No, no.
So how much would a share for an average 2,000 square foot house
A solar panel
19 pounds?
is around, a single panel would be around $750 after
So-
tax credits.
So times
750
20
times 19.
So your average, what we're seeing is we're seeing people spending $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, those kinds of numbers on average. And it generates, in electricity, it saves them about 2.5 times that over the 25 years. So the financial reason why people do this is they can either pay Central Hudson $25,000 over the next 25 years, or you can pay $10,000 now and not pay them anything. That's the financial reason. But people are,
Have you
people,
done a return on investment analysis on that?
pardon me?
Have you done a return on investment analysis?
Yeah.
So compound interest, what is that?
Well,
How many-
the year one return is about 10 to 11% on the investment.
Year one?
Yep.
Jeff, may I ask a question?
Yes.
This community solar project, is this a for-profit or a non-profit?
No, we're a business, so we're a,
Okay, so you own,
no.
we said we, I'm trying to understand.
Hudson Solar is what is called the project developer, the engineering, procurement, construction firm, and what New York State refers to as the sponsor and the operator. So we will operate the solar farm on behalf of the members who purchase solar panels in it. So we build it, we operate it, they purchase solar panels. They're a member of basically a cooperative, and we manage and operate that for them.
Electricity from you.
Pardon me?
They're basically a purchaser of electricity from you.
No.
Okay.
No, they purchase solar panels and then they get credits applied onto their electric bill.
If the solar plant produces more energy than their house uses in a given month, are they credited extra, or do they only cap off at X number of times?
The excess credits accumulate at the customer site indefinitely.
Indefinitely, so a little rollover thing going on.
Correct.
At the end of the year, they don't get credit, though, they don't make money.
There is no cash-out mechanism. You get credits that accumulate. But New York State's community solar order from the Public Service Commission restricts people to purchasing no more than what is required to generate what they have demonstrated they use on site. The reason is because they don't want people to start buying these up and then scalping them, basically scalping the solar panels to
You say that
other
the
people.
credits are rolled over, but are they sellable at any time?
No, the credits are applied to a utility account number.
So if that person keeps on, finds out that they bought more solar panels than they needed, and finds out they got this accumulating rollover forever stuff, but they can't sell it to anybody else, and they can't use it in their lifetime because it keeps increasing.
Well, what they can do is they can sell their solar panels. They can sell some of their solar panels. So we're getting a lot of questions about that from people, because people are saying, I want to do this and I want to buy an electric vehicle, or what happens if I move out of town, some people say. So they go, if you move out of town under New York State's rules for community solar, if you move into somewhere in the same utility territory, you can take the credits with you. If you pack up and move to Florida, then you can either sell the solar panels with your house and say, by the way, my house comes just like it comes with appliances, dishwasher and refrigerator are already in it. It also comes with 19 solar panels in a community solar array, and therefore we have no electric bill.
Could
So
you sell it on a separate market, separate from your house?
It's
Like, so
their
people
personal,
buy your house
yes.
don't want the solar,
Yeah.
you can...
They're personal property, so you can buy them and sell them just like they're personal property. We anticipate that as the sponsor and the operator of the projects, that we'll have kind of a natural coming and going of people. Some people will move out of town, and move away out of state, and other people will purchase an electric vehicle. And so we think there'll be an opportunity for us to say, hey, members of the community solar array, these guys are moving out of town, they have 12 panels they want to sell. Anybody interested?
Okay, and if, God forbid, some really efficient technology comes in and the price of electricity plummets, what happens to this investment then? Is that just becomes a write-off to be the purchase? They'll still be getting electricity, but it'll be at, twice the rate as, or 5 times.
Well,
the rate as what
Central Hudson submits a rate case every 3 years. They're about to do it in January of this year. They're going to submit their next rate case. I don't believe they've ever asked to lower electricity prices.
I understand that, but 25 years is a long time, and technology goes at funny rates.
Yeah.
So it's not inconceivable that we could find ourselves in the future where electricity is much less expensive than it is now. And then what happens to this instead?
Well, then they still generate electricity. You'd still get bill credits. You would just get less of a dollar credit than you were getting, say, in year one. But most people don't think that electricity prices are going down. And historically, Central Hudson has increased electricity prices by about, I think it's 2.9% a year for the last 25 years or something. It's fairly methodical. And our grid is in bad shape, and it needs investment. So they need to spend money to upgrade the grid.
If I could, I think this gentleman has something he wants to say.
Hi, so I'm up again, Philip Karate. I own the 15 acres just north of the proposed electrical power plant. So I'm struck by, Jeff showed us a picture of a solar farm that was 50 panels. And this is going to be 1,560 panels, is that right? Okay, so it's pretty gigantic. And I'm wondering, where your obligation is on this as a panel, because you pretty much have the whole street here that do not want this thing. They signed a petition, they're driving you crazy calling up. So is your obligation really to the residents, to the homeowners, to the property owners, or is your obligation to somebody opening up a business? Because that's what this is. This is a business. It's very similar to like a timeshare. You collect money, you get your cut off of it. So the obligation to the street and the homeowners should be of utmost importance, probably number one. So we have 1,560 panels, and you guys are all big on building a berm and a wall and all that kind of stuff. But when people look for homes and they look for properties, they go to, like Amanda said, they go to Google Earth and they look out, and now they're going to see 1,560 solar panels, a massive project in the middle of a residential area. And what do you think that does to their homeowners' values? It destroys them. That's your obligation here. Your obligation is to these people, not to Hudson Solar. So I think that needs a really long consideration of what we're doing and where we're progressing here, because we're going down this road to rubber stamp this project, and the people of the street do not want it. And I think that's really important, that it changes the character of our road, and we don't want it. So just take that into consideration, because it's very important. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
So I just wanted to point out, last time, I think it was Eric, he said that in 20 years, a berm's going to look a lot nicer than a fence. And I feel like we're going backwards again. I thought last time we discussed that a berm would be better, and now we're talking about fences. And I guess I'm just confused about that. And I hope that, whatever is, if this does go through, which obviously I don't think it should, whatever is going to withstand time, whether it's a berm, or whatever is what's chosen, and not something that's going to deteriorate like a wooden fence or an opaque fence. I don't even know what that looks like, but it sounds hideous. I had to look up, because it wasn't in the application materials, the, I don't know what you call it, like the manufacturer's sheet for these LG panels. And I can't remember off the top of my head, but Jeff mentioned a 25-year warranty. There's also a 12-year limited warranty on these. and that covers other things. And I feel like one of the things that covered, was sort of like things due to natural elements, like heavy snow. Obviously, we don't have like tornadoes here, but, things of that nature. So there is a shorter, limited warranty on these panels. Again, I swear, I feel like I'm going crazy. Last time we talked about, Jeff said that this plant would be recommissioned every 25 years. He said that he thought that there would be interest in it and it would go again. And I stood up here last time and I said he basically just admitted this thing was permanent. He never said anything about it. And then now he's saying, oh no, it's going to be removed in 25 years. I'm just confused. To me, it seems like, based on what he said last time, this was going to be permanent. And every 25 years, it was just going to get, recommissioned, especially if the technology was fine. It was just going to, replace whatever was broken, and it was going to keep going. You guys were talking, you were asking him about this noise impact study, which I guess, according to him, is impossible. And he's claiming that it's just a fan, but, this is our home. And I, for one, as maybe as intelligent as Jeff is, I don't want to trust him with my home value and where we've invested all of this money into our home. I don't trust him with that. So I think that something has to be done about this noise issue. So that's one other thing. And then last time, Cindy from the inn stood up here and said that these shares were $60,000. No? Oh, you said 1,000. Okay, then I totally misheard you.
You need 60 panels
Oh, but you would need 60 panels for a house?
for the amount of coverage that we would have needed at the time we discussed that with Jeff at the time. John can speak more to that, to us at that meeting.
So you're saying it would have been 60 panels for like the inn or something? Okay, so that's where the $60,000
So
number
the
came from.
average person was only 19, I think you said, the average home.
To mitigate what normally the usage would be for the inn, would be probably $60,000.
Okay.
Sorry for the confusion.
No, that's fine. I guess I couldn't hear or misheard. So that's where the $60,000 number came from. Last time, though, I think it was Richard who brought up that if these panels aren't all purchased, Jeff owns them. Is that true? Like, not everyone purchases the shares and Jeff stuck with them?
Something like that.
So even though Jeff's claiming that he's just going to be the operator of this, it sounds like he might get stuck. He said it's only about 50% perhaps bought or interest shown. So that seems like he could potentially be left with 50 shares of this.
Which by what Jeff just said, correct me if I'm wrong, no one can profit from those shares. It's because they have to be applied to a piece of property and the shares need to be purchased. Otherwise, if you go over the amount of money, you don't get, there's no cashback mechanism in this.
But does that mean Jeff can't pump, like, let's say if he only sells half of this plant, and there's this other half of this plant that no one in Rhine Cliff owns or wherever else, does that mean Jeff can't pump that electricity back in the grid?
I think in pumping the grid, you can't get anything for it, though.
I'm sure.
Oh,
Jeff
he's like
can
giving-
Side deal and own them and apply them to 13 Main Street and take less money quietly behind the scenes, but from what he just said, he can't take money out of the system.
So that means like he would be giving Central Hudson free electricity?
Yeah.
Sounds like it.
Okay. That,
I think it goes without saying that his intention is to sell all of it.
yeah, I was gonna say, it doesn't sound like a good investment then, if he gets stuck with half of it, and he has to give away free electricity.
I don't think he's been planning on that. One of the important criteria being, and it answers my question about having to be in the town, you don't have to be in the town, but you do have to be under Central Hudson's domain,
Grid.
which is much larger than Rhinebeck, but
And then just one final point, I actually did today see that Central Hudson was having like these meetings around town about their rate increases, and actually one of the reasons why they're increasing all of our electricity bills is to accommodate for community solar. So that's, I don't know, I mean, it's obviously ironic, but,
Go for it, you already paid for it.
you know, it's just, we're on top of our property values, our tax dollars, now our Central Hudson bill. You know, we could, all of us stand to lose a lot. So again, in line with what Phil said, I would hope you would all consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else tonight?
Michael, her comment brings up one other question for me, if there's nobody else.
Yeah, okay.
If Jeff gets to the point where he's sold half of them and all the panels are up, can he then take some of them down and resell those panels if it's okay with anybody who's buying them from him? I mean, there's nothing that preclude that in this business.
No, not in the plan, and I would guess that since there's a series of inverters, a certain number of panels run through each inverter, and you just basically, would say like going down just, you'd have to, basically, the thing you do with solar panels, though, as long as the sun is out, they're going to be trying to produce something.
And would he be allowed to set this up in phases according to what's sold at the time?
That's not before us, that's not part of this application,
Okay,
so
the
no.
whole array has to go in?
Yes.
If it's approved?
Yes.
And in which case, but there's nothing that says he can't then remove some after the fact and sell them to somebody else?
I think that's something we'd have to look at in terms of if this were to go to any sort of approval, exactly under what conditions it would be approved,
Right.
and what future transactions could take place, yeah.
Are the actual panels a costly element, or is it more about the installation and the inverter?
Probably would.
The panels themselves are maybe about 20% of the cost of the system, but I don't think we're going to have any trouble selling this. I mean, my company has had 12,000 people over 15 years ask us to come and have a look at their place for solar. We've told half of them right away that just based on satellite imagery or driving by, I'm sorry, that you can't have solar panels. Your roof's too small, you have trees, it doesn't face in the right direction, that kind of thing. And those people seem to be coming out of the woodwork. We're getting people up and down South Street and Parsonage and throughout Rhinecliff that are saying they've decided they wanted to go solar 5 years ago, but they've had us and 2 other solar companies tell them 5 times that they can't put it on their property. So we only started marketing this a month or 2 ago, and the word's just getting out, and we're getting 2 or 3 orders, reservations a week, and it seems to be increasing. So I don't think that will be an issue. I think there'll be more demand than supply for community solar for quite some time.
I'm sure you've researched this. I just have to cover other what-ifs,
Yeah.
so that we're covered.
Yeah, and Central Hudson, the Public Service Commission has restricted the amount of community solar that can be deployed, and this system will qualify for what they call full, basically retail net metering. The commission realizes that they can't let this continue unabated because it would be very bad for utilities. So there's a restricted basket of systems that can be done at that level, and this project's one of them. Central Hudson would love for community, they'd love for all solar to go away because they have competition for the first time in their lives, and they're not used to that, and they would rather continue to get their electricity from natural gas and nuclear and coal and whatever else they do. But there's a lot of people that don't want to do that anymore. They want to get their power from a clean source, and a local source seems to particularly appeal to people.
Chip, may I ask you a question? Without taxpayer support, does solar compete truly with Central Hudson?
We're pretty close.
Yeah.
When I started the business, NYSERDA's rebate was $4 a watt. We're now at 40 cents. So they've cut their funding by 90%. The federal tax credit is set to go away. The 30% federal tax credit goes away at the end of 2019. And I think the solar industry will be ready for it.
And what is the state tax credit?
There's no state tax credit applicable to community solar.
Jeff, is that, you're saying you're level close to it now, but is that providing conditioned power 24/7, or is that just while the sun shines?
We're still at the point where...
You can't provide conditioned power 24/7 without a whole lot of other...
Without batteries, yes.
Yeah, So if you add that to the mix.
Yes.
Where are you in the
Well, in places like Hawaii, it's already far cheaper to go solar even with batteries than it is to purchase from the grid. California's right behind them. Australia's there. New York, it depends on where you are. Electricity prices in Long Island and Con Ed, we're not quite there yet. But we'll get there because their rates are going up. They have to invest a lot of money in the grid to maintain reliability. Their equipment is ancient. The pole, the three-phase pole that's in the backyard of the bed and breakfast was, I think I told you guys, when it's got a date stamp on it. It's got a metal sticker and it's got 2 digits. Those are 19 and I think it's like 29 or something. That pole is going to come down, and just because it's almost 100 years old. So that's how old their grid is.
Their grid is what you're building your business on. So without their grid, you have nothing either.
Correct.
Okay, so, I mean, it is important that
Yeah.
they maintain their grid.
Yeah.
I'd love to see more of it go underground. I heard that was a possibility they were studying, but it's expensive. Their grid has to stay here,
Yeah.
in all fairness.
Yeah.
How much, is there federal tax dollars that go into the building of this?
The people who purchase panels are eligible for a 30% federal tax credit.
But there's no kind of rebate or anything physically for the installation or anything?
Not at the federal level. The state there is.
What does the state do for you?
I think it's this system 20. It's about 6 or 7% maybe. The state rebate. 24 cents a watt, I think.
Any other questions tonight?
One of my first questions to Jeff and also to the board in my email was that same question about where the closest comparable solar plant is that uses the same equipment. And I just want to reiterate that I don't think Wurtemberg Road should be used as like a test site for this type of plant. It just seems like we should know what it's going to be before it's there. And I find it hard to believe. Is there a smaller one or a slightly larger one that uses? There's got to be one, right? Like, and if there isn't, then that's terrifying to me. And I think that if there is one, which I'm sure there is, that somebody from the planning board, and I would love to know where it is too, because I would like to visit it to also have that assurance. I also just wanted to reiterate, I moved to Rhinebeck 2 months ago. I grew up in Dutchess County in the town of Poughkeepsie. And I've always admired Rhinebeck. I've always sort of wanted to live here. And it's because it's beautiful, it's rural, the character, and most of all, it remains intact. So I've been here in Dutchess County since I've been a little kid. And Rhinebeck always, it still feels beautiful. It still feels historic. And I remember when I actually, when the building inspector came to the house that I purchased, I was there with my dad, and I noticed the barn that's on Barry Sherrod's property. And I was super, I think I said this last time, but I looked at parcel access. Every house that I looked at, I was on parcel access. I was looking up who lived where. I knew like the details on everything. And I remember being concerned about it because it was a vacant land, but I also figured there was no law allowing a power plant to be there at that time, so I didn't have to worry about that then. That changed. And I remember my dad, I was with him at the inspection. I told him I was worried. He goes, oh, don't worry about it. Like, stuff like that won't happen in Rhinebeck. And it's just kind of ironic that I'm standing here because I don't think that it fits in with the character of the adjacent properties. I don't think it fits in with the historic character of the neighborhood. And yeah, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you.
I know, unless Jeff comes back up here. So Jeff said something like he's had 12,000 people ask him about solar, and out of that half, he's had to say, sorry, we can't give you solar. I don't think those 6,000 people live in Rhinebeck. and they're certainly not here. And they certainly don't live on Wurtemberg Road, and I don't know that it's the town's, duty or your duty to accommodate all of Central Hudson's grid and all of these supposedly 6,000 people that want this thing. One of the first conversations I had with Jeff, he was telling me how everyone loves solar and everyone loves community solar power plants and all this stuff. And I mean, I don't really have a problem with solar if you want to put it on your own roof or, I'm not saying like, oh, burn oil or something, but he was just making it sound like everyone wants this and everyone loves it. But if everyone really feels that way, then it can go on a different street because you have all of Wurtemberg Road here and we're saying we don't want it here. And if everyone really does want it on a different road in Rhinebeck, they'll pay to convert the lines. You can convert any one-phase line to three-phase. It doesn't have to go here. And also I would just ask, can the planning board, if Jeff has one, is there a prospectus to this, like some sort of like literature he hands out if you want to buy a share where he's like, hey, this is what it's going to cost and this is what you can expect from it?
I don't know. I haven't seen anything.
Well, I guess you're the planning board. I guess I would ask if maybe you consider asking him for that so it can become publicly available for all of us that are interested in seeing like numbers as opposed to talking about the abstract. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else tonight? Yes.
Cynthia Curran, I work at the bed and breakfast, but could you just, as the board, could you go over what testing is going to be done? Like what is the seeker, like what?
That's what we're going to discuss at our October meeting. That's why we're setting that workshop aside to see exactly what we think
Okay, so it hasn't
needs
been
to be.
established yet, like what is actually?
None of it's been established.
Okay,
We
thanks.
haven't even discussed it amongst ourselves.
Okay, so you'll decide like if there's going to be for like, species and things and different.
Yeah, that's what the whole workshop is for on the 2nd, is to make those decisions.
For clarifying that.
I'm sorry? It's October 2nd. Yes, it's the first Monday in October. And it'll be the regular planning board meeting at 6:30, which I think is going to be very short. The meeting will then adjourn, and after that, what we're going to do is go into the workshop. Yes?
My name is Dorna Schroeder, and I live on Winecoop Lane. And I feel like somebody needs to speak up for, because I am a co-op member of this project. I'm very excited about it. And I totally get your concern. I totally get it. Where I lived prior to this, my land behind me was destroyed, not for solar, which I would have been okay with, but for housing development. So I really understand it, and I understand your concerns. Also living in a neighborhood, I think about noise, and I think about the leaf blowers and the lawn mowers that are going off daily, and they are a heck of a lot noisier than these fans are. And I truly think that we should, make some type of comparison to that, because I don't feel that they have any comparison to the noise that most neighborhoods have. And I also want to commend Rhinebeck for thinking forward, because this type of project is very important. I am a landowner who doesn't, or a homeowner who doesn't have the right property for solar, and I've been looking to put solar in for many years, and I'm very excited about it, and I'm really hoping that you'll go forward with it, keeping in mind your concerns and your considerations, and please know that we appreciate and understand how you feel. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes?
Hi there, I'm Kara Keywell. I'm actually on Ackerd Hook Road, and I'm a little new to this discussion, so forgive me if this has already been covered. But what is the logic behind finding all these small parcels on which to put these arrays instead of taking some existing commercial vacant property and putting them all together in a larger area? Because I see the arguments of both sides. I just don't understand why the small residential parcels, relatively small residential parcels, and aren't we just going to go through this over and over again as we try and ramp up solar in our community?
I think it's safe to say if it proves not to be a successful way to approach it, that the town board will revise the solar law and another approach will be taken.
Thank you.
I'm Nina Lynch. I live in the Woods condominium, and I too have signed up to be part of the community solar. It's a very simple process. I heard Jeff speak at the library. I've always wanted solar. I live in a condo. I couldn't do it there. I simply shared my account number with Central Hudson, with his office, and they gave me an immediate reply. I would be eligible for, I think it's 15. I didn't expect to speak, so I didn't bring my paperwork. Roughly, I put in 20,000. I end up roughly 11,000 is my actual after I get the rebate. And I think it's a wonderful investment. If it isn't, I still feel wonderful about having the opportunity to go solar and to get off the natural gas and coal. I do appreciate the distress that the folks on Wurtemberg Road feel, and I commend you for the work you've got ahead to sort it all out. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else tonight? Yes?
My name is Susan Van Cleek, and I live in a condo also. I'm newly back to Rhinebeck, although I lived here for 27 years, from the 60s to the 90s. I appreciate what people are saying, but I'm not sure that the property values are going to go down. A lot of people would love to buy a house that had solar. They would like to buy in a place like that. And I also think that the traditional, the character of Rhinebeck might be more spoiled by every single house up and down Parsonage and Chestnut and Livingston having its own solar panel. So I don't think that that array on the top of the hill is going to really change the character of Rhinebeck. I think it would be nice if we could see a map showing the coverage, because we can't see that there. I mean, we just saw a picture of 50. I would like to see how much 100 and 1,500, whatever it is, covers. So perhaps he'll do that when the workshop comes. But again, I appreciate the work that everybody's done and also the concerns that people have. But I don't think it's going to ruin Rhinebeck. I think it's going to be a more desirable place to live, frankly.
You think it'll make you sell your condo and move out to Wurtemberg Road?
What?
Just teasing.
No, I want to be right in the village. Let her walk. I think it'll be good for climate.
Thank you.
I'll say one thing in response to that, with all due respect, everyone's entitled to their opinion, but what I just heard was that let's not spoil the village and let's spoil Wurtemberg Road. And that's the problem. We love our road, we love where we live, we love how it looks. I love not living next to a power plant. There's 2 National Register properties there. I don't think that that's a good reason to put it on Wurtemberg Road so people that live in the village don't have to look at it. We're not the place to hide this stuff. And so that's all I'll say in response to that. That was just awful.
Thank you. Okay, yes. That's possible. Okay, I think we're sort of getting beyond the point of a public hearing where you're talking to each other and not talking to the planning board. So I think it would be a good time to adjourn tonight. What we're going to be doing on the 2nd is we are going to be having a workshop. It won't be a public hearing. We're going to continue the public hearing to the 2nd meeting in October, which will be, I believe, on the 16th, if my math is right.
Right.
And by that time, the workshop will have taken place. We'll be able to inform you of any of the decisions made in terms of what studies are going to be done, who's going to do it, when it's going to be done, if we have any timeline ideas of how long it's going to take them to do the studies. I think some of the things are going to happen. It's going to be somewhat helpful, given the season, to do a visual analysis, because I think we'll probably get into the leaf-off situation, which we wouldn't be if we were doing this in July or August. So I think that can also be quite helpful in giving us a more full, well-rounded view of exactly what the visual aspects are going to be. So, having said that, I would like to ask for a motion from the Planning Board to continue the public hearing to October 16th at an appropriate time, at 7 o'clock? 7 o'clock.
So moved.
Second?
Question before we close it. I heard from one person, I don't remember who it was, who will submit potential other analysis, experts in visual analysis. Are we going to take public comment and notes for our workshop, or are we?
No. What we're going to do is people have people they want to suggest. Please give us the names, who the firm is, what experience they have with that firm, what that firm's specialty is. No.
For the meeting?
No.
Okay.
And you said it was October 16th at 7 p.m.?
That's the public hearing. The workshop is going to be October 2nd.
Right, but the next public hearing on...
Yes, yes, at 7 p.m., assuming they pass this resolution. Could I hear a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Very good. Woody not being here, I guess we spend the night.
I have the chair.
Yeah.
I move that we adjourn.
All in favor?
Wait a minute.
Very-
Second.
Need a second.
Oh, thank you. Eric just seconded. All in favor? Very good. I want to thank you all to come. I encourage you to come and listen to the workshop, because that's basically, we're going to try and develop exactly what we feel we need to do to basically meet the requirements of the law, of seeker, of the other obligations that we're under in reviewing this. And then on the 16th, we'll be in a position, we'll reopen the public hearing. Hopefully, we'll have some answers for you, but I'm going to imagine most of the studies are going to take a little longer than that, and it's going to take a while to get the answers that we need. But I appreciate you all being here tonight. Thank you. Good night.